Welcome everyone. I am David Shipley Alexander. With the help of friends, I have posted 31 videos on YouTube and other channels. The central theme of these videos is free energy, which I have often called infinite energy. Another concept in many of these videos is rotation. This presentation does feature rotation, but I am trying to describe it from a more personal perspective. One could ask the question, what did rotation mean to David Shipley Alexander at different stages of his life? These things I describe are my experience. So in chronological order, we have David's Adventures of Rotation, Part 1. Trains. Among the earliest memories I have are watching trains. Not model trains, but full size. Trains travel on steel wheels. So there is the link to rotation. What memories? As a little boy of about 3 years old, one of the adults in my life, either dad or mom or grandma, would hold my hand as we lived then in Baltimore, Maryland, about a block from where the trains could be seen, but we had to cross two busy streets. One was the street we lived on, St. Paul Street, one of the busiest streets in Baltimore. The view to see trains was essentially looking downward. After one of the adults would boost me up on a stone wall with a slotted iron fence on top to see the trains in an open section of a long train tunnel. I remember the excitement when I could hear a train coming, passenger or freight train, no way to tell. But after a little bit of smoke emerged from the tunnel, followed by the steam engine, diesel engines were in the future, the very next car would indicate the type of train, passenger or freight. It is interesting that if it were evening, the dining car of a passenger train would be illuminated, and my viewing angle would let me look through the train windows and observe people eating their dinners or smoking an after-dinner cigar. I had quite an emotional reaction when Johnny Cash had his breakthrough Folsom Prison Blues song recorded July 30, 1955. Two lines of that song's lyrics described what I had seen years earlier as a young child. I present them here. I bet there's rich folks eating in a fancy diner car. They're probably drinking coffee and smoking big cigars. I found it remarkable that someone could put exactly what I saw when I was just a little boy into a song, and I have been a fan of Johnny Cash songs and trains since. The record player. Our living room on St. Paul Street featured an interesting piece of furniture, which had a console radio on one side and record player on the other side. It was probably my grandmother who showed me how to, very carefully of course, operate the record player. The only record speed then was 78 RPM. This abbreviation stands for revolutions per minute, but that is definitely rotation. My favorite record, they were all big and probably bought by my mom, contained the music from the original animated movie Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, a Walt Disney movie that came out in the late 1930s, even older than me. I remember marveling at the rotation of this large piece of heavy plastic rotating with its grooves and the record player's needle riding those grooves, and as it progressed inward, it released an encompassing sound that I would wrap myself in over and over. It is still amazing to me, at some level, that rotation combined with vibration that the needle and groove released could make a sound of music and voices. I, ever the scientist, even as the little boy, knew that this had to be some form of alchemical magic. So rotation is more interesting when you add vibration to it. My tricycle. When I was somewhat older, another connection with rotation occurred when my parents bought me a tricycle, provided with the warning, "Stay away from the street." The tricycle was steel and very heavy. The age of plastic toys had not yet arrived. I felt a huge sense of accomplishment when I was able to carry my tricycle up the front steps and onto our porch by myself. It was on my tricycle that I rode around the block on the sidewalk, staying away from the street, of course. The rotation of those three wheels showed me the basis of the Trinity. For something to stand upright in the three dimensions of time and space, it must have three footings or it will fall over. It was between these three wheels, rolling down that sidewalk beside St. Paul Street, that I realized that I could transport the space on my seat to different places, and that as long as I was on that seat, I could take the journey in that space as it moved from place to place. There was one place in particular that would catch my attention over and over. It was this particular poster of a very familiar man who had his finger raised, pointed, yes, it was your and my Uncle Sam, saying to us all in the timelessness of his request, "I want you," which I understood meant to do what you came here to do. And I've been about my uncle's business ever since. He's leading me on an interesting journey. My bicycle. Somewhat later, my dad bought me a bicycle. I discovered that the third wheel of my bicycle was found in the courage and will of trying, which is the alchemical key. Try. Theos rules you. When I learned to love and not fear my bike, when I willed to push through that fear, the wise dominion of balance entered my life, and pretty soon my bicycle almost rode by itself. I don't think I could make myself fall down anymore, and for that my elbows were grateful. So too were my knees. And my old tricycle that I loved so much was put out to pasture for this new thoroughbred whose third wheel was my heart. I have sought balance ever since. And I now understand what I understood as a boy, that gyros seek to fulfill the laws of Newton. It was magic. Once I could ride a bike, I could never not ride a bike again. An amazing thing to learn. Dangerous rotation. When I was 8 years old, I unfortunately encountered a dangerous rotating object. While visiting my friend and his family during summer vacation on their farm near Frederick, Maryland, I was helping out by mowing their front lawn with a push-type lawnmower. Clearing some debris out of the mower, unfortunately while the blades were still turning, I somehow managed to nearly cut off the end of the middle finger of my right hand. Nearly is definitely better than totally, but what followed was much pain, a visit to a hospital emergency room, many visits to doctors' offices, and a continuing dialogue from the dark voices within saying, how could I possibly be so clumsy and stupid? My finger healed up fine. But one lasting consequence is that to this day, I'm very careful around blades, especially moving ones. Are we all not besieged by negative dialogue? It has been a part of my pathway of understanding that this enemy within steals from us our greatest moments of invention and self-realization. I have discovered that the most dangerous rotation of all is the revolving of these negative dialogues, whether they are in my own mind or on the lips of the news broadcaster or the shyster who is seeking their own destructive and selfish ends. Freedom from these dangerous rotations are found in the same place I found the balance in my bicycle. They call it the Heart Project. Gyroscopes. I first encountered gyroscopes sometime in my elementary school years. Interesting toys, but much more, as I learned later. A bit tedious to use, I had to carefully wind the string around the axle, giving it a good pull, and watch this example of rotation do its thing, like appearing to defy balance or even gravity. Much later, as I, with the help of a friend, produced video number 6 of my Free Energy, Infinite Energy video series, I encountered the concept of scissoring gyroscopes being used by a major American aerospace corporation to provide propulsion in low gravity for orbiting satellites. About 2 years ago, a friend and I did some experiments changing the angle between a pair of motor-driven, precision, high RPM gyroscopes which were manufactured by a company in England. We did propulsion experiments with these gyroscopes spun up with a small low-voltage motor and observed interesting results. We had to move on to other things, but the gyroscope experiments were another interesting encounter with rotation, waiting for further experiments. With sincere respect to my friends in England, couldn't good precision gyroscopes like the ones I bought be manufactured in the USA? The boomerang. Approximately in the mid-1950s, my dad gave me, of course my 2 younger brothers could try it out also, a boomerang. What an interesting device. It seemed rather simple. Made out of wood, flat, 2 arms about 1.5 feet long. The angle between the arms was somewhat more than a right angle. The thrower would hold the end of one arm and throw it from one end of a large field, enabling the device to rapidly rotate in a flat plane, there it is, while it climbed into the sky and traced out a big circle. It could be 200 feet or so in diameter in the sky. Then, rather amazingly, would come back very close to the thrower and land on the ground after completing its big circle in the sky. It was so amazing to see it come back to the thrower. I cannot tell you how many things have come back to me after I have put them in motion. Some call it karma, others, as you sow, so shall you reap. My take on this is that the universe itself rotates, and I can cause little eddies of its energy, not only by the thoughts, feelings, and actions I have, but they come back to me qualified with the very energy I sent them out with. It's a law of nature. I have learned to try and be positive in all I do now. Lathes. When I was in what was then called junior high school, I had my introduction to first the wood lathe, and then a little later in high school to the metal lathe. If one is making something symmetric to a central axis, a lathe is the device which does the job. The appropriate piece of material is placed in the lathe such that it is held securely, but rotated. There it is. An appropriate cutting tool is placed on a tool rest and moved forward very carefully to first convert the material being cut into a cylindrical shape. With other appropriate cutting tools, the cylindrical shape could be further converted to any desired shape with cylindrical symmetry. I created a wood lamp. The narrower top held a light bulb socket. The base was the widest part of the wood. Sanded smooth, stained, and shellacked. It actually looks awesome. Later, when I was introduced to metal lathes, my shop instructor convinced me that the cutting rate into metal is very much less than that for wood, or else very bad things will happen very quickly. I believed him and had no problems. After all, remember the lawnmower. I have been riding Uncle Sam's lathe and long ago had the hard corners knocked off, and I do believe I am now down to my titanium core. Keeping it symmetrical is a very slow cutting rate indeed. I am calling these adventures Part 1. Stay tuned for Part 2. I am looking deeper into the fundamental nature of rotation than I have ever looked before, and you are welcome to join the journey. In the immortal words of our beloved Isaac Newton, gravity explains the motion of the planets, but it cannot explain who sets the planets in motion.